Don't worry, Ukrainians. The world-renowned United States Air Force is busy working on one of their top priorities: LGBTQ initiatives. The Air Force Undersecretary just tweeted out a screenshot of a Zoom conference that they had with their LGBTQ initiatives team, saying that they're asking hard but necessary questions that will ultimately make us a stronger, more inclusive department of the Air Force. It appears this was a private meeting. I haven't been able to find any footage of it, but I'm sure it went something like this.
Let's just clear this up because I keep getting this comment. I think a lot of you are newer to my corner of the internet and don't know that I'm a gender fluid person, so you might have seen a video where I talk about being non-binary versus a video where I talk about being a trans girl, and they're both correct. This is the best way I can break it down. I am a gender fluid person, meaning that I feel a fluidity between multiple genders, and some more some days than others. Some are situational, some are interdependent on the people that I'm with. So my core identity is being fluid. Wrap your head around that. In my experience of gender, non-binary is a wonderfully affirming label because I do not fit in the binary of just being a man or just being a woman. Being connected to womanhood and being a woman, though, is a huge informant to my identity. And sometimes I'll just pick one of those terms to use because they're most appropriate for that situation at that time. That's why I use both they and she as a pronoun, because I feel like it represents this tension between being fluid between the two and also holding both of those fixed spaces in different times.
The first thing that old Joe did when he became the president was establish a new Office of Diversity and Inclusion in the military and issue a new policy welcoming transgender soldiers. No wonder Putin decided to invade Ukraine. What is our Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden going to do about it? Have the military organize a gay pride parade? I'm sure Putin saw the woke army and CIA recruitment videos and thought, yep, the United States is finished. Now's the time. Things are going so bad for old Joe that even liberals are starting to admit the obvious.
If Putin thought Trump was really that supportive of him, why didn't he invade when Trump was in office? It's at least worth asking that question if you're not locked into one intransigent thought.
That is a good question, and a lot of people are asking it. Meanwhile, old Joe is trying to buy oil from other unfriendly countries, like Saudi Arabia, but nobody seems to want to take his calls.
Apparently, Saudi Arabia won't even pick up the phone for the President of the United States. There's no denying that Saudi Arabia isn't playing ball with Joe Biden. And you know what? You can say what you want, but this would have never happened to Donald Trump. Never. No one was ever ignoring Donald Trump's calls. Yeah, because if you ignored Donald Trump's calls, you didn't know how he would respond. Maybe he'd send an angry tweet, or maybe he'd just ban your country from everything. You don't know. That's why I bet in these situations, Biden actually wishes that he could hire Trump to step in as President Wildcard. Just keep everyone on their toes.
The White House did find someone to take their calls, however, TikTokers. So they invited a group of them onto a Zoom call to give them some talking points to repeat to their fans about how the price of gas going up isn't Biden's fault at all. It's Putin's. Like this girl who has 10 million TikTok followers.
Russia is one of the top 3 producers of oil, and it is actually their #1 revenue source. Now, with Putin starting this horrific fight between Ukraine and Russia, nobody wants to work with him and do international trade. So, with people being scared of war and limited resources, prices are bound to go up as well.
Okay, that's enough. That girl doesn't do political content, by the way, or any social commentary. All she does, literally, is post 10-second dance videos, because people obviously aren't subscribing to her TikTok channel for her brains. By the way, gas was over $4.50 in California long before Putin invaded Ukraine. Not to mention, those stickers were showing up on gas pumps across the country of Joe Biden pointing to the price, captioned, "I did that." Meanwhile, if you ask any questions about things like the Ukrainian Azov Battalion, or Right Sector, or Stefan Bandera, or the Adar Battalion, which Amnesty International says committed war crimes against ethnic Russians living in the Donbass region, then you're called a Russian agent, a propagandist, and you should be investigated by the Department of Justice.
And I think DOJ, in the same way that it is setting up a task force to investigate oligarchs, should look into people who are Russian propagandists and shilling for Putin. That's being, if you are a foreign asset to a dictator, it should be investigated.
Peter Strzok, who I'm sure you recall helped orchestrate the deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump, kicking off the witch hunt, trying to paint him as a Russian operative, is now calling Tucker Carlson an operative that needs to be investigated too. There's so much fake news being spread about the invasion of Ukraine that it's impossible to keep up, but the New York Times says, why bother? Viral stories like the ghost of Kyiv, a Ukrainian pilot who supposedly single-handedly shot down several Russian fighter jets, are of questionable veracity, meaning fake, but they're a key part of Ukraine's war plan, experts say, as it tries to keep morale high. So now if you debunk the fake news, then you're also a Russian propagandist undermining Ukraine's effort to combat the Russians. As the saying goes, truth is the first casualty in war. Back in 1990, when the United States was considering going into the Middle East to protect Kuwait from Saddam Hussein invading, a key moment came after a young girl testified that she witnessed Iraqi soldiers in a Kuwait hospital rummaging through the maternity ward and tipping over the incubators with the babies inside of them. The babies in incubators became a key talking point of then President George H.W. Bush, who's a member of the Skull and Bones Illuminati Mafia, by the way. After the dust of the Gulf War settled, it was revealed that girl didn't work in the hospital, had never been to the hospital, but was instead the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador who was tasked with lying to the world in order to gain support for an intervention there. And everyone knows the neocons in the Bush administration concocted the WMD hoax in order to justify going back to Iraq in 2003. Most, not all, but most wars are started by lies. You could go back to the 1880s and the Remember the Maine campaign and the yellow journalism that got us involved in the Spanish-American War, or the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which got us involved in the Vietnam War, or, well, you're not supposed to talk about some of the other more recent ones. In 30 years, perhaps we'll be able to discuss why Russia invaded Ukraine without being called Russian propagandists. Now, I'm not supporting the invasion, I'm not justifying it, I'm just pointing out the obvious that nobody is allowed at this point to mention what Vladimir Putin's reasons are for doing what he's doing, other than saying he's pure evil. Like Zelensky cozying up with NATO was aggravating Putin. Or like how Zelensky wasn't able to get fighting under control in eastern Ukraine, like the Donbass region. You're also not supposed to talk about how the CIA helped orchestrate a coup in Ukraine in 2014, which overthrew the Russian-friendly president Viktor Yanukovych, and then replaced him by a more Western-friendly president. Personally, I'm tired of seeing the 24/7 coverage of the war, especially when the United States is being invaded by 100,000 illegal aliens every single month, month after month after month, through our southern border. So I think I'm going to do some more in-depth reports. Instead of just covering the pop culture politics of the day, a lot of people like my longer, more serious reports. And I like to get into the details and cover the history of a lot of issues like Operation Mockingbird, the Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, etc. So stay tuned for those. I have some real hardcore ones that I'm working on that'll be coming out later this spring. Just wait. But until then, order an Operation Mockingbird shirt from my online store at markdice.com or click the link in the description below. Like all of my designs, it's available in a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and a whole bunch of different colors as well. And not only is it a great shirt, you support the channel, it's a good conversation starter as well. Help plant some seeds about what Operation Mockingbird is, because not enough people obviously know. Like all of my designs, it's available in a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and a whole bunch of different colors as well. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.